Typically a lovely seaside view transformed into an impending monster. Hurricane Sally marching ashore this morning. Breaking news, endless rain causing life-threatening flash floods. More than 2 feet of rain washing away roads, even highways. Water rushing through homes. More than 150 people rescued in one county alone. More than 500,000 customers without power. Taking leave. The top health official and key Trump ally stepping aside 24 hours after apologizing for an alarming rant directed at CDC scientists. One video telling Trump supporters, if you carry guns, buy ammunition. Tonight, Michael Caputo claims his mental health is, quote, definitely failing. Clash of the campaigns. President Trump contradicting the head of the CDC on the effectiveness of masks and vaccines. This is Joe Biden blasts Trump for his handling of the pandemic. You remember this moment? The woman who said her mother died from cancer. The president brought up COVID. We'll speak to her tonight. We're also monitoring the growing outrage in Rochester once again after documents just made public appear to suggest that police lied about how Daniel Prude died and tried to frame him. Our conversation with Christian Cooper, the man made famous after a racist encounter he had in Central Park while bird watching. Tonight, he has a new graphic novel coming out honoring victims of racial injustice. And our sneak peek at the new presidential monument set to debut in Washington. What the relatives of Dwight Eisenhower think of this moment and the contrast being made between him and the Republican president currently in the White House. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with the devastation in the Gulf. Sally making landfall as a Category 2. It's now technically a tropical storm, but it is no less dangerous than it's been for the last 24 hours. You see it there moving slowly across the south, dumping rain that's not just being measured by inches, but by feet. The torrential rain has caused residents to have to be rescued by boat. Search and rescue crews have been hard at work all day long getting people to safety. The power of the storm can be seen by the destruction. Boats tossed about in this Alabama marina. And in Pensacola, part of a bridge collapsed when 2.5 feet of rain pelted the downtown area, causing it to flood. That's where ABC's senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is tonight. He joins us in just a moment, but first, his report.
Tonight, Sally's landfall on the Gulf Coast, bringing wind-blown devastation and a seemingly never-ending deluge.
We're getting it now, and really this thing's been moving so slowly. We've been getting it like this for a good 6 hours.
Sally made landfall before dawn as a powerful Category 2 hurricane with winds up to 105 miles per hour.
The wind has just been relentless here in downtown Pensacola. This is Main Street, and it's just nuking Whitecaps with this storm surge. Debris, traffic lights littering this street.
Watch as this tractor trailer tips over on Interstate 10 above Mobile Bay. And part of the Pensacola Bay Bridge now torn away.
The powerful surf sending this barge right into someone's backyard.
In Mobile, more than 300 firefighters on duty, going house by damaged house, cutting through trees to reach those trapped. This woman, now safe, giving praise as she was taken to an ambulance. And in Escambia County, Florida, more than 150 people rescued from one neighborhood alone.
We anticipate the evacuations could literally be in the thousands.
We're in chest deep water.
Civilian Samaritans joining the effort in Santa Rosa County. And in Pensacola, we meet the McCords, thankful that they didn't get hurt.
So you rode it out all night long to your house. And you hear this big tree come down? What did that feel like?
Scary.
I bet.
Across the region, more than 500,000 losing power. And while more than 5 feet of storm surge was rushing into Pensacola, our Ginger Z seeing the reverse.
Right now, I am walking on Mobile Bay, right at the head of the Dog River. This was full of water yesterday, but when the wind shifted to the north-northeast, the bay pushed back into the ocean on the backside of Sally.
Back in Pensacola, destruction everywhere you look.
I mean, just look at the sheer damage of this building. A whole second half ripped to the ground.
In Gulf Shores, Alabama, where Sally's eye crossed the shore, new drone video shows the back of this 10-story apartment building completely sheared off. You can see the bedrooms, sheets and curtains blowing in the breeze. Thankfully, it doesn't appear that anyone was inside during the storm.
Rob Marciano joins us now from Pensacola. Sorry.
So, all right, stand by. Take 2. Stand by, Rob. Stand by, Lindsay. 3, 2.
Rob Marciano joins us now from Pensacola, Florida, where the floodwaters seem to be receding, but surely going to leave a mess. Rob, what's the latest on the situation there, and how is your team doing after a very long night?
Well, we're all safe. Thanks for asking, Lindsay. And I'm happy to report, at least for now, up until now, there are no fatalities to report. But this is still a very dangerous storm, and there are still some flooded neighborhoods, especially east of this location. You can see the storm surge has receded here in Pensacola. And even though we got over 2 feet of rainfall, that seems to have drained pretty well, at least here in the city of Pensacola. This barge behind me, one of several construction barges that broke loose from its moorings during the storm, some of which either ran aground like this one did or slammed into a causeway bridge, badly damaging it, and that one's out of commission until further notice. So long-term damage done here in Pensacola and the Florida Panhandle. Let's go over where the storm is going, Lindsay, and show you that we're not done with it yet, even though it is weakening. Of course, it's got a lot of rainfall with it. It's got a lot of threats, including a tornado threat east of the center of this, which is now rotating up through Alabama. Will go through Georgia as well. Flash flood emergency where some of those heavy rain bands are spiraling up as well, and we've got flood watches that extend through most of Georgia, most of the Carolinas, as that entire part of the southeast is going to get a piece of Sally as this storm rolls off towards the northeast. But a slow recovery certainly here for Pensacola. And I should say this also, Lindsay, that because the track of this thing shifted pretty quickly to the east, they had to ramp things up for prep pretty quickly here. There was only one shelter that was open during the storm, and they're scrambling, the county is, tonight to open up more for storm victims that have been evacuated from either flooded or damaged homes. So Sally has certainly gone by the beat of her own drum.
All right, the need certainly great there. Rob Marciano in Pensacola, our thanks to you. And turning now to our chief meteorologist, Ginger Zee. Ginger, what's the expected storm track, and how much rain are some areas looking at over the next day or two?
It is really pretty life-threatening still as far as the rainfall goes. But let me just start you out with what's behind me, Lindsay, because I am in front of a church here in Mobile where the steeple has been hanging over. We had 82-mile-per-hour gusts on the backside of Sally here in Mobile. We drove around everywhere from Orange Beach to Gulf Shores today. A lot of tree damage, some structural damage, but I was really impressed with, at least on the left side, or where the center of Sally went over, how little damage, for how fast the winds were. Nearly 100-mile-per-hour clocked officially. Now I want to take you to the storm because I have to answer that question of how much of it is left and what are we going to see. Rob already talked about that rainfall, right? And so that is still moving through. You can see it on the satellite, Alabama, Georgia, and now making its way into South Carolina. This thing moved so slowly, which was a big part of the problem overnight. Now it's going to pick up some speed. It's going to get some help from the jet stream, and tomorrow it'll become a remnant low, and you'll end up seeing it slide across South Carolina and North Carolina before the start of the weekend. So with it, though, don't forget you could have 1 inch per hour rainfall rate. So if you are in Troy, Alabama tonight, or Macon tomorrow, Atlanta tomorrow morning before about 7 or 8 a.m., then you'll start to clear there and goes into western South Carolina. Remember, you get some of the southern ends of the Appalachians there, and that could end up causing big-time problems. Flash flood alerts all the way from Norfolk back through the Florida Panhandle tonight. In total, I think we end up anywhere from 6 to 12 inches of rain, especially in those target areas. But even in Virginia, you could end up with more than 4 inches from Sally before the weekend is upon us.
That toppled steeple, just such a good indication of the power of the wind. What can you tell us as far as the slow-moving storms? Is there a growing consensus that climate change is at fault?
A lot of scientists who are doing research right now are saying that is so. I just spoke with one of those researchers last week, and she was telling me all about her new research that she has put together about the jet stream. It's a pretty simple concept. Basically, our jet stream is like a fence that separates cold and warm. The poles are cold, the equator's warm. When you have a less cold pole, as we've seen with the melting of the ice caps and a warming, I mean, really considerable in the Arctic, you're going to have less temperature gradient. That means that the jet stream, the thing that's sandwiched between them, she says, moves slower and is a bit more lackadaisical, so it can get stuck. And in this case, we did have a blocked pattern, and that is part of why this hurricane was slower. Harvey, Florence, examples of that. Other scientists will say, this research is so new. We really don't have the breadth or depth to tell us that this is a concern. But either way, everyone says that we have absolutely added CO2 CO2 to this atmosphere, greenhouse gases. Physically, it makes sense that you add more moisture to storms and could potentially make them more intense. So yes, there's some connection, but we're just not that deep on it yet. Lindsay.
You always have a way of explaining it in a way that makes so much sense. Ginger, thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
And joining us now from Pensacola, Florida by phone because the power is out is the mayor of Pensacola, Grover Robinson. Mayor, thanks so much for joining us. We have certainly seen the harrowing images of your flooded downtown and a bridge with parts of it presumably swept away. What's the situation on the ground like right now, and what will residents in your city need most in the days ahead?
Well, thank you very much for having us on. Obviously, the big challenge for this storm was water. Whether it was the surge or whether it was the rain, the significant thing here was water. So for us, the fact that it's not raining right now is great for our citizens. The challenge is much of the day, the winds were still high enough that crews really weren't able to get in here and start figuring out how to get power back up. The good news is, compared to Ivan, which was 16 years to the day ago, the most significant storm that's hit Pensacola, we had much more down as far as lines, poles, everything else. I think power will be able to get back on faster with this than it was with Ivan. Obviously, the big part of this is getting the water out and then being able to come back and rebuild and do all the things that we need to do. But power is the most important thing right now. But again, the Gulf Coast, we're resilient people down here. We're used to this. We understand these things happen. We'll get back out. But right now, the biggest thing we need is power.
And what's your message to people in the community who may want to assess the damage at their homes as this storm makes its slow move north?
Well, again, if you want to assess the damage of your home, go get out and do your home. It's obviously getting dark now. We have a curfew this evening. We ask you to get back to your house, settle in for the night, and then, yes, when you get up in the morning. But please do not go out. One of the biggest problems that our police department had today was getting cars that would drive into running water and get stuck. So it wasn't people who were trying to evacuate during the middle of the storm. It was people, sightseers, who want to get out after the storm. So right now, if you could stay home, wait for us to get through, and then we can get out there and see everything. We're going to be ready to go and get back to normal, and that's our whole objective. But right now, we really need first responders and road crews to have the priority on getting out and getting things taken care of.
And finally, Mayor, what's the situation for those who may need shelter or a place to stay tonight?
You know, Escambia County has several shelters open. It's been an interesting thing with shelters. I mean, this has been all year we've been discussing this because it's been hard. We really haven't been pushing shelters because of COVID. Even throughout this process, shelters were not where we wanted people to go. We wanted people who had either friends or relatives on high ground to go there first. If you don't have anyone, then go to a shelter. But COVID has made it very difficult. We used to pack a lot of people into a shelter. We can't do that with COVID. So, that's perhaps been the biggest issue with sheltering. But I do think a number of shelters are open, and we hope that people that have no place that can go there, that have no place other that they can go to, we want them to go to the shelter.
Mayor, thank you so much for your time tonight. Of course, you are in our thoughts, wishing a speedy recovery for your city.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And remember, we're coming back, so we're going to be back.
Love that optimism. And to the wildfires now burning on the West Coast tonight. Dramatic new helmet camera video shows firefighters battling a massive wall of flames in California moments after the Creek Fire broke out earlier this month. In Oregon, officials are calling in a mobile morgue for the first time ever. At least 8 people have died so far, and at least 50 remain missing. The flames destroying 2,400 homes and businesses so far. The smoke from these massive fires still smothering many West Coast cities and reaching all the way to Europe tonight. Now to the latest on the coronavirus and the conflicting messages in Washington today on when a vaccine will finally be ready. It comes after President Trump took questions from undecided voters at our ABC News town hall last night, several about the coronavirus, with the president casting doubt on the value of wearing masks and again saying the virus will just go away. Joe Biden pushing back today and saying the president is politicizing the race for a vaccine. ABC's Mary Bruce is on the campaign trail covering it all.
Tonight, with the election fast approaching, President Trump wants Americans to know a vaccine is coming soon. His administration announcing that as soon as one is approved, they'll start shipping doses within 24 hours.
We think we can start sometime in October. So as soon as it is announced, we'll be able to start.
But on Capitol Hill, the head of the CDC said that while a limited supply may be available in November or December, most Americans will have to wait much longer than that.
If you're asking me when is it going to be generally available to the American public so we can begin to take advantage of vaccine to get back to our regular life, I think we're probably looking at late second quarter, third quarter, 2021.
But late today, the president bluntly rejecting that scientific assessment.
I think he made a mistake when he said that. It's just incorrect information. I believe he was confused.
Joe Biden today with a warning.
We can't allow politics to interfere with the vaccine in any way. So let me be clear. I trust vaccines. I trust scientists. But I don't trust Donald Trump.
We pressed him on the message he's sending to Americans.
Is there a risk that that message, that questioning the president on a vaccine, could prevent people from trusting the science, from trusting a vaccine when there finally is one?
No, because they know he doesn't have any respect for scientists. It has to be total transparency. So scientists outside the government know exactly what is being approved, the context in which it's being approved, and why it's being approved.
For a vaccine to work, though, to be effective, you do need a certain amount of the population to be willing to take it. You're saying, don't trust the president, trust me if I'm elected. Are you confident that enough Americans will buy in?
Trust the scientists.
And if the scientists say a vaccine under the president's watch is safe and effective,
absolutely,
you will take it?
Do it. Yes.
Biden also took aim at the president's comments in the ABC News town hall. The president still refusing to urge Americans to wear a mask.
There are a lot of people think the masks are not good. And there are a lot of people that, as an example,
Who are those people?
Well, I'll tell you who those people are. Waiters, they come over and they serve you and they have a mask. And I saw it the other day where they were serving me. And they're playing with a mask. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying what happens. They're playing with a mask, so the mask is over, and they're touching it, and then they're touching the plate. That can't be good. There are people that don't think masks are good.
But today, the CDC director made clear masks are good and necessary.
Face masks, these face masks are the most important, powerful public health tool we have. I might even go so far as to say that this face mask is more guaranteed to protect me against COVID than when I take a COVID vaccine.
Redfield with that declarative statement there. Mary Bruce joins us now. And Mary, in that press conference today, the president also went after the CDC director on masks.
Yeah, the president did not like what Dr. Redfield had to say, where he suggested there that masks may actually be more effective than the vaccine. The president said that is absolutely not true. Big picture here, though, Lindsay, the president, despite the fact that top scientists and health experts back up what Redfield is arguing here, both in terms of the effectiveness of masks and a timeline for a possible vaccine, the president is completely undermining him. It is just a remarkable, extraordinary clash between the president and his own CDC director right in the middle of this pandemic, and now with just 48 days to go until the election.
And turning to the race of 2020, some new polling from the ABC News and the Washington Post out today in two critical swing states. What do they show?
Some good numbers here for Joe Biden. His team is quite happy with this. They show that Biden is up 6 points among likely voters in Wisconsin, that state, of course, that the president carried by less than 1 percentage point in 2016. And the poll also shows that Biden is up 16 points in Minnesota. That is a state that Trump had been hoping he could possibly flip. Both campaigns now eyeing these critical Midwestern states. Lindsay.
Mary Bruce, thanks as always for your reporting. And we want to play an emotional moment from the ABC town hall last night. An immigrant from the Dominican Republic who recently became a U.S. citizen asked a question on behalf of her mother, who died of cancer just days after she finally became an American citizen.
She has breast cancer, but it made metastases on her brain, bone, and lungs. She passed on the 19th. One of her biggest dreams was to become a citizen to vote, and she did. She did 10 days before she died, and I did it too. She pushed me so hard to do it, and I did it this past 28. I'm here because of her. She was supposed to be here and ask you and thank you for the stage you take during this epidemic. You made people closer. We lost our job, but we learned how to love our family. So I'm saying that from her.
Very nice.
Her question for you was, because she wrote this question, what would you do for our immigration system? What would you change to make more people like me and like her to become citizens and vote?
So we are doing something with immigration that I think is going to be very strong, because we want people to come into our country, people like you and like your mother. And that just shows how vicious the COVID is, especially when you have another problem. You have a heart problem or another type of a problem.
Flor Cruzeta joins us now. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming on. Question for you is, 24 hours after that emotional moment, how are you feeling about the president's response?
But I feel disappointed. He did start talking about immigration, and then he completely switched to a COVID. I understand that is the situation we are living right now, the pandemic, but I did not say that my mom died for the COVID. So I don't know if he misunderstood me or he really just changed my question to his benefit. At that moment, I cannot say to him that I did not say that my mom died from COVID, because my words wasn't coming out from my mouth because I was too much crying. But I was disappointed though.
So you recognized at the time that he was assuming that your mom had passed from COVID, but you just felt it was inappropriate to correct him.
It's not that it wasn't inappropriate, it's just that I'm in pain.
Yeah.
I tried to speak, but I couldn't. I just too much in my brain at that moment, and I tried to understand that he did not completely understood me, or he just tried to change my question completely.
And your family came to the U.S. in 2006. 14 years later, you're finally a U.S. citizen. Since President Trump took office, his administration has moved to put barriers on legal immigration and decrease the number of refugees allowed by the thousands. Are you concerned that it appears to be getting harder for immigrants to legally come to the U.S. and become citizens?
He's making everything hard for us. I don't know what we can expect from him if he wins, because he's just putting people apart. He's just taking family apart. My mom was a part of member of ACASA in Action, which is a group of people who help Spanish people, Latin people like me to become a citizen in both. And I think it's hard for us to listen from the president that he wants just people to come illegally here when they just want to live the American dream and they don't have the money to pay for come here. So they have to do whatever they need to do to make their family better and have a future. It's hard for me to listen that. I hope I can have the strongest to speak up last night, but I didn't. I have to be honest. I just break out so much last night.
Well, I think that a lot of people in your situation would perhaps feel the same. And our deepest condolences to you, Flor, for the loss of your mother. And we thank you so much for your time tonight and sharing with us here.
Thank you for the time and for the opportunity to be here with you guys.
Also on the coronavirus tonight, a top official at the Department of Health and Human Services who went on an alarming rant on Facebook against scientists at the CDC is taking a leave of absence, citing his health. It comes as the head of the CDC was on Capitol Hill today denying any documents have been altered because of political pressure. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
The embattled head of communications for the agency leading the Trump administration's response to coronavirus is taking a leave of absence, days after a bizarre Facebook rant where he urged Trump supporters to prepare for armed insurrection and talked about his own health problems.
But my health is failing. My mental health is definitely failing. I don't like being alone in Washington. The shadows on the ceiling in my apartment, there alone, those shadows are so long.
The video, which was posted on Facebook on Sunday, had been deleted and was obtained today by Yahoo in the Buffalo News. In his rant, Michael Caputo, a longtime Trump loyalist, described several unfounded conspiracy theories, accusing scientists at the Centers for Disease Control of sedition.
The partisan Democrats, the conjugal media, and the scientists, the deep state scientists, want America sick through November.
He predicted a violent conclusion of the presidential election without providing evidence warning of left-wing hit squads.
I mean, if you carry guns, buy ammunition, ladies and gentlemen, because it's going to be hard to get.
End civil war.
This is war. Joe Biden's not going to concede. When Joe Biden loses, they will try to steal it.
Day after he posted that video on Facebook, HHS defended Caputo, calling him a critical, integral part of the president's coronavirus response. Caputo and his team had been under fire after reports they pressured scientists at the CDC to change their weekly reports on the pandemic to put them more in line with the president's message. Today, the head of the CDC, Dr. Robert Redfield, told Congress he was saddened by the accusations and declared them absolutely untrue. Redfield also insisted there has been no political interference with the CDC's weekly COVID-19 reports.
At no time has the scientific integrity of the MMWR been compromised.
Our thanks to John. And Congress has now released a damning report on the crash of two Boeing 737 MAX jets. You may recall those planes, a new generation of what was once the world's most popular, have been grounded since last spring after two crashed in just 5 months, killing 346 people. As Gio Benitez reports, the findings are troubling.
Tonight, a scathing congressional report blames Boeing and the FAA for the deadly 737 MAX crashes that killed 346 people. In the 18-month investigation, lawmakers finding what they called a horrific culmination of failures and missed opportunities during the design, development, and certification of the MAX. In October 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 crashed off the coast of Indonesia into the Java Sea. Nearly 5 months later, a second 737 MAX, Ethiopian Air Flight 302, plummeted near Addis Ababa. Relatives of the crash victims have been raising their voices since that second crash in March 2019.
My wife and my mom-in-law knew they were going to die. They had to somehow comfort the children during those final moments, knowing they were all their last.
Tomorrow it can be you, it can be your families, it can be your wives and your kids.
The report says Boeing's responses to safety issues raised in the 737 MAX program have consistently been too late. Investigators citing tremendous financial pressure on Boeing and the MAX program to compete with other airplane manufacturers, even installing a countdown clock to remind staff about the MAX's schedule. But the blaming doesn't stop there. Lawmakers also point the finger at the FAA, saying the agency's oversight was hampered by poor, disjointed FAA communication, and that ineffective communication and lack of coordination on key safety issues put the flying public in danger. The FAA telling ABC News, "We are already undertaking important initiatives based on what we have learned from our own internal reviews as well as independent reviews." And Boeing responding that it learned many hard lessons as a company from the accidents and has made fundamental changes to our company as a result. The MAX is not expected to fly again until late this year or perhaps even 2021. Gio Benitez, ABC News, New York.
Our thanks to Gio and the entire transportation unit. When we come back, the terrifying construction accident, two cranes colliding, one operator left dangling in the air. Our sneak peek at the Eisenhower Memorial and the contrast already being made between him and the current Republican president. But up next, the documents made public suggesting police may have lied about how Daniel Prude died and then allegedly tried to frame him.
Now could be a good time to have another baby.
Are you crazy? I'm in love with
with you. Now that I said it out loud, it does sound weird.
Please stop. When I see you were so fine, I had to remind myself to breathe. Feel something when I see you.
Let's do this.
How's your quarantine going?
Right now, at this defining moment in America, with so much on the line.
We gon' be all right. We gon' be all
From
right.
ABC News, Turning Point, the groundbreaking month-long event. Every night, taking over, taking on. This moment for America. My America, your America, our America. This is Turning Point, the Nightline month-long event.
We gon' be all right.
Late night on ABC.
And now to major developments in the police-involved death investigation of Daniel Prude in Rochester, New York. Newly released documents suggest that the city tried to block the release of body camera footage and, perhaps even more disturbingly, to allegedly change reports by calling him a suspect instead of a victim. ABC's Janae Norman has the details.
Are you Daniel?
Yes, sir. Tonight, new accusations that officers in Rochester tried to alter the narrative after their encounter with Daniel Prude, an unarmed black man suffering a mental health crisis who later died in their custody. Newly released paperwork revealing at least one person revised an incident report in which Prude was originally labeled as a victim to write, "Make him a suspect." Police alleging video shows Prude broke a store window before the encounter. Today, the family's lawyer telling us he has not seen that video.
That shows that the cover-up began immediately. And it began not only with the officers involved in the incident, but their supervisors and higher-level police officials.
Disturbing police body camera video shows officers in March covering Prude's head with a spit hood, later pinning him to the ground before he stopped breathing. Documents also showing officials' efforts to delay releasing that footage. An email in June shows Mark Simmons, then deputy police chief, writing his boss, "We certainly do not want people to misinterpret the officers' actions and conflate this incident with any recent killings of unarmed black men by law enforcement nationally. That would simply be a false narrative." Chief LaRon D. Singletary replying, "I totally agree." And Monday, the mayor moved to abruptly fire the police chief who she'd once defended. Meanwhile, the investigation into what happened by New York's Attorney General is ongoing. Lindsay.
Janae, thank you so much. Still ahead here on Prime, our conversation with Christian Cooper. You may recall the racist altercation while he was birdwatching in Central Park. Now he's coming out with a graphic novel spotlighting victims of injustice. An update on the I Am Vanessa bill that's being introduced by Congress, why its authors hope it finally brings female service members in the military the protection from harassment and assault they need. And Joe Biden is set to flood the airwaves in 10 battleground states. Our closer look at campaign spending as we near the home stretch of the 2020 elections. But first, our post of the day. WNBA's Maya Moore announcing she's marrying the man who was wrongfully convicted that she helped free from prison over the summer.
In America, you've got to earn respect.
I'm the boss. This is my town.
They're going to war with us.
We'll kill them all.
There's a big fish out there.
We're the future. They're the past. They just don't know it yet.
Fargo, September 27th on FX. Next day, FX on Hulu.
There is a Bible verse that says, your sin will find you out.
Friday night.
Guardian 911, where's your emergency? Hello?
This is not only a news story, it's a sports celebrity story.
Greed, false trails, cold-blooded murder.
How could you have murdered my son?
Just wow.
No one was prepared for what would come next.
Are you kidding me?
A murder mystery still unsolved. Money, sex, and family secrets. The 2020 event, Friday at 9/8 Central on ABC.
Welcome back, everybody. If you live in a battleground state and you like to watch TV, you probably feel inundated with political ads. With just 7 weeks until Election Day, we take a look at the battle for the airwaves and how Joe Biden and the Democrats have recently stepped up their game, by the numbers. The Trump campaign and Republican group spent about $80 million to air 161,744 TV ads from May through July. In contrast, Biden's campaign and Democratic group spent about half as much, about $44 million, to air 66,975 ads during that same time period. But Trump has lost his edge in TV advertising. Republicans aired 107,816 ads for about $71.5 million in August and half of September, while Democrats aired 183,341 ads for an estimated $107 million during that time. For most of the year, Trump and the RNC comfortably outraised Biden and the DNC, but that fundraising gap has now closed. In August, Biden and the Democrats raised a record $365 million compared to $210 million raised by Trump and the Republicans. In Pennsylvania, a state that could decide the election, Democrats aired 30,882 TV spots in August and part of September. Republicans aired about half that with 15,702 spots. But in the digital space, where Trump likes to inhabit, the president keeps his edge. His campaign spent $67 million on Facebook and Google ads, while Biden spent about $46 million in August and part of September. Still, lots more ahead on Prime. Our Bob Woodruff speaks with the head of the NIH. How much will the COVID vaccine cost? We finally got our answer. Big Ten football is coming back after all, but what happens if a player tests positive for COVID? And the mystery behind who stole one man's cell phone revealed. And you might laugh at how. But first, here's some of the trending stories on abcnews.com.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready? Drop in and explore. The action, the adventure, and the originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your worlds. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you'll find them all here on Disney Plus.
Now, with so much on the line, ABC News, America's #1 news, is right there for you live on Hulu with stories of strength, stories of hope. Because now, when it matters most,
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news. And that news is ABC News.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
Watch the news you need.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Streaming to all Hulu subscribers right now.
We move up to the vehicle. He detonates a bomb.
The heroes who stopped the killer, who held the city of Austin hostage for 19 days.
It's a tripwire.
All hands on deck.
The clues, the Home Depot video, that truck, and the agent who connected the dots.
It was exactly the vehicle that we were looking for.
Inside the investigation,
Vans made contact.
the takedown of the bomber. Now streaming on Hulu.
I mean, just look at the sheer damage of this building. A whole second half ripped to the ground.
Sally has been pounding the Gulf Coast all morning. Now a tropical storm.
The wind has just been relentless here in downtown Pensacola.
Pensacola, massive flooding and tropical storm wind gusts wiping out a portion of the 3 Mile Bridge.
We anticipate the evacuations could literally be in the thousands. So it's going to be a long time, folks, for us to come out of this thing.
A storm surge warning is in effect for the Alabama-Florida border.
Top White House health officials testifying on Capitol Hill, telling lawmakers if a coronavirus vaccine is ready this year, first responders and high-risk groups will get it first.
If you're asking me when is it going to be generally available to the American public so we can begin to take advantage of vaccine to get back to our regular life, I think we're probably looking at late second quarter, third quarter, 2021.
They say most Americans will not get vaccinated until late 2021.
These actually, we have clear scientific evidence they work, and they are our best defense.
In Austin, Texas, nearly 24 people were injured when 2 cranes collided at a construction site.
Right now,
No one is trapped or injured, and we are doing our best to just kind of monitor the scene and keep people away.
I just heard a big, bang. It's crazy. It was so loud. It's just something you wouldn't hear on your normal day,
It was basically a crane versus crane incident. We transported 16. All of those transports were to various hospitals around the Austin area. All of those injuries are considered non-life-threatening.
On Capitol Hill, a new bill has been introduced aimed at changing the military response to missing service members and sexual assault allegations.
We are introducing the I Am Vanessa Guillen legislation today.
Introduced by Representative Jackie Speer and several others, it's named after the Fort Hood soldier who disappeared in April. Her body was found in June.
For every service member in this country who deserves a chance to serve in the military without fear of being sexually harassed or sexually assaulted from within.
Guillen's family says Vanessa had been sexually harassed.
She's now an American hero that will save lots of lives.
This is a happy day for us in the Big Ten.
Big Ten football will be back this fall after a unanimous vote by chancellors and presidents.
They have been laser focused from day one to make sure in the most environment safe and to allow our student athletes to participate in the most safe and healthy manner.
The conference will restart the fall season starting October 23rd. It says any student athlete who tests positive for COVID-19 will be sidelined for at least 21 days.
Some serious monkey business in Malaysia. A man who had his phone stolen solved the mystery when he found selfies from the culprit, a monkey. The owner heard the phone ringing near the trees behind his home, and when he examined it, he found a gallery full of the photos and videos that the monkey photographer had captured.
Turning back now to the race for a vaccine after those mixed messages in Washington today on when the American public will see one widely available. It comes as the death toll from the coronavirus is set to hit a sobering milestone in the coming week, with 200,000 Americans losing their lives to the pandemic. So for Reality Check on where a vaccine stands, our Bob Woodruff sat down with the director of the National Institutes of Health for our latest Vaccine Watch.
An important question for many finally answered today. Operation Warp Speed officials announced that any COVID-19 vaccine produced and approved in the U.S. will be absolutely free. The news announced today during a press conference with Operation Warp Speed officials.
In terms of a principle and an aspiration, it'll be that no American has to pay a single dime out of pocket to get a vaccine.
Operation Warp Speed is an initiative to have millions of doses ready to ship once a vaccine is given FDA approval. However, the officials say they still don't know how or when Americans will get them.
This is a really quite extraordinary, logistically complex undertaking, and a lot of uncertainties right now.
But the president has been touting the speed of vaccine development. In Philadelphia last night, once again promising potential approval before Election Day.
And we're within weeks of getting it, could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
The director of National Institutes of Health and Dr. Anthony Fauci's direct boss told us this timeline is much more complicated.
I would expect that if we have a vaccine that's approved by December, by the spring, most Americans will have a chance to have access to it. And certainly by the middle of 2021, we ought to be in a pretty good place.
Director Collins and his team at the NIH are in direct coordination with many of the top vaccine developers, including AstraZeneca, a company whose vaccine trials hit a speed bump last week.
Has there been any other cases where people have gotten sick? Those that are involved have actually volunteered to do this? In any of these other companies, any of these other trials?
I have heard of no other instances of what would be called a severe adverse event.
Despite what seems to be promising late-stage human trials, a large portion of the public remains skeptical.
Does it shock you at all, Dr. Collins, that there was this Gallup poll that says that 1 out of every 3 Americans would not get vaccinated?
It troubles me greatly that people have already arrived at that conclusion, because I would think, as sensible people, you'd want to wait until you could see the actual data about benefits and risks before you made that decision. If we really want to be able to get past this, we're going to need to get to a place where something like 70% of the public is no longer at risk for COVID-19. There are two ways to get there. One is by getting sick with the disease. That's not a good solution for people who may not survive the illness. The other way is the vaccine.
And if the U.S. falls behind, the question remains, would America accept the vaccine developed on foreign soil?
I think they would if we were interested and we were convinced that they were safe and effective. Obviously, we kind of believe that our system in the U.S. is more rigorous, and we would have to be really convinced that a vaccine coming from Russia or China was the right thing for our people. But I don't think we would rule that out if it turns out that theirs came along successfully and we ran into some sort of serious speed bumps with our own effort.
Despite the uncertain timeline, Collins believes there could be as many as 800 million vaccine doses available by mid-next year. Officials from Operation Warp Speed say they're prepared to ship doses to first responders and those most at risk the moment FDA grants approval. This is Bob Woodruff, tracking the race for a vaccine.
Our thanks to Bob Woodruff for that report. And we turn now to the world of comic books, so often considered an escape with epic battles between good and evil, the powerful and the powerless. But here's a twist. Remember Christian Cooper, the Black Central Park bird watcher who had a confrontation back in May with a white woman who falsely claimed that he was threatening her after he asked her to leash her dog?
I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to me.
And I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life. There is an African-American man. I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately.
Well, Chris Cooper has now written a graphic novel illustrated by veteran comic artist Aletha Martinez that's loosely based on that experience and also on the killings of black men and women by police officers. Their book, It's a Bird, is being released today as part of a DC Comics Books digital first series called Represent. The series highlights typically underrepresented groups in comics, and we are fortunate enough to be joined now by Chris Cooper and Aletha Martinez. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So It's a Bird follows the story of Jules, a black teenage bird watcher who looks through binoculars and sees Amadou Diallo, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. Chris, while many people came to know you as a bird watcher, years ago you actually worked as a comic book editor and writer. Tell us the story of It's a Bird and how the idea came about.
Sure. Some folks who I've had worked with in the past, and we've remained tight friends over the years, came to me after the incident in Central Park and said, hey, maybe we should do a comic book that draws from your experiences. And at first I was like, well, I don't know about that. It's not exactly capes and tights or anything. But we talked about it a little bit. And then finally they tossed a title at me. And they said, well, you're talking to somebody high up at DC, and they really like this title. It's a bird. And it took me a second. I thought, oh, I see what you did there. It's a bird. Look up in the sky. It's a plane. It's a plane. It's a bird. It's Superman. So, and once they gave me the title, I just thought it was so clever. It just got my engine going and the wheels turning, and the story just kind of flowed out of me after that.
And Aletha, you're, of course, well known in the comics world, and I should add a rare person of color and a woman in that world. You've illustrated Iron Man and Batgirl comics, among many others. Explain how your own experiences of coming back to this country as a child and being deported colored the images that you brought to life here, and also the inclusion of the portrayal of your own son.
Yes, well, Jules is my son. My son and I travel a lot for the U.S. State Department World Speaker Program, and we go all over the United States to comic book conventions as well. But it was when we were returning from North Carolina, the TSA stopped me, and because of my hyphenated last name. And after a bit back and forth, they did let us go. But I actually saw the transformation in my own child from that innocence, that world of just being open and accepting everyone and everyone accepting him, to just this hardened young man who was a little bit afraid. So of course, when this opportunity came to me, I said, you know what? This character is my son. This is our experience. And that was my little contribution to Christian's story.
Not so little.
And Chris, at the end, the character Jules, he turns his back on the woman in the park, and her words start to get smaller and smaller. And you've said that that's because it's not about her anymore. It's about the ones that we've lost and how we keep from losing any more. Does part of that start with identifying and punishing bad behavior that targets black people? Specifically, what I'm trying to get at is, in your case, the Manhattan DA charged Amy Cooper with filing a false police report, but you refused to cooperate in the investigation. Why?
Well, I'm very much on the fence about that. I'm of two minds. Part of me is very much believes that there's a principle to be upheld here, and yeah, she needs to be charged in order to be held accountable. And part of me is like, well, you know, considering that I suffered no direct harm, and considering that you know, she's already lost her job and suffered a lot of already negative effects, that, you know, she's already paid a price. But the bottom line, you know, beyond any of that, is exactly what I showed in the comic book. It's not about her. It's to focus on her is to miss the point. And the point is the underlying racism that runs through our society and through lots of people who don't want to look at themselves. And by focusing on her, they manage to avoid looking at themselves and say, oh, look at her, she did that. Yeah, well, look in the mirror. What did you do? What have you done? What is in your life that you should be examining and changing to fight this vein of racism that runs through our country?
And Aletha, would you agree with that? Do you feel that Amy Cooper needs to be punished beyond losing her job and being shamed publicly?
Well, I'm of a slightly different opinion than Christian. If there is no prosecution, it's not seen as a crime, and it will continue because it happens so often. It's almost a comedy.
Well, today we are also focusing on the book. And Chris, let me come back to you again. The book is free and it launches the Represent series. Where can we find it? And what do you hope that people take away from it?
Sure. I hope people get inspired to think about these issues and how how you know, the deaths and the racism, how it's all of one piece. It's all from the same cloth. And I hope also, especially that young people read it and they get educated, because I am constantly surprised at how many young people don't know a lot of these cases that are listed. There's an epilogue in the comic that mentions specific incidences of Black Lives Matter, people who have been killed. So I hope there's education that goes on. As far as where you can find it at Read DC or dccomics.com. And you want to look for Represent. That's the name of the comic book series that It's a Bird is a part of. So if you can find that, you'll find the comic, and it's absolutely free, which I think is fantastic, because the more people who read it, the better.
And Aletha, same question to you. What do you hope that people take away from it?
I hope that they understand, even begin to understand, that we are all in this together. And if we want to see positive change happen, we have to stand together, accountable for it.
Chris and Aletha, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And when we come back, our sneak peek at the newest presidential monument coming to Washington.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
Finally tonight, after years of delay and some controversy, a former Republican president is getting a major monument in the nation's capital. Tomorrow, the Dwight D. Eisenhower Memorial will be officially open to visitors along the National Mall, joining Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln as a landmark tribute. It's prompting a re-examination of the 34th president's legacy and comparisons to Donald Trump. Here's Devin Dwyer.
As the sun rises over Washington, Dwight Eisenhower is seen in a new light, a new shrine to an American icon and kind of leadership the nation hasn't seen in generations.
34th president and Supreme Allied Commander in World War II. And that is what this represents.
Dwight D. Eisenhower this week becomes just the 7th American president with a dedicated memorial near the National Mall.
He joins the greats, you know, Washington, Jefferson, in terms of founding our country, Lincoln, the two Roosevelts, the Kennedy Center is actually a presidential memorial. So his His legacy is cemented, I think, in American history through this memorial.
The memorial charts Eisenhower's rise from a son of Abilene, Kansas, to wartime general and two-term president. A steel mesh tapestry depicts the coast of Normandy, France, where Allied forces under Eisenhower's command stormed the beaches on D-Day in 1944. After years of disputes over the $150 million design, which was authorized by Congress in 1999, the memorial was finished just this week, 2 decades later, under budget.
It's not bombastic, it's quiet.
Architect Frank Gehry says his design is meant to remind us that ordinary Americans can do great things.
It's possible that there are people like that living with us that can rise to the occasion given the opportunities. And it can come from anywhere, from any race or culture.
You like Ike, I like Ike, everybody likes Ike.
Ike won the White House in a landslide in 1952, presiding over years of prosperity and peace in America.
We are in transition from a wartime to a peacetime economy.
President Eisenhower appointed 5 justices to the U.S. Supreme Court, expanded the interstate highway system, and created NASA and the FAA.
Our defenses must be adequate, not just today, but tomorrow and in all the years to come.
He was in a society where we would find people who could make a difference at the right time.
He oversaw desegregation of the U.S. military and public schools, sending the National Guard into Little Rock in 1957 to enforce integration. He signed into law early protections for voting rights, but critics say his push for equality wasn't strong enough. Eisenhower favoring an incremental approach to racial justice that was later overtaken by an eruption of racial unrest after he left office. And toward gay and lesbian Americans, Eisenhower authorized discrimination in 1953, signing an order to ban them from the government.
Is there anything about your grandfather's legacy that you're not proud of?
I know he was disappointed that he could not bring the Cold War to an end by the end of his 8 years. In terms of his personal flaws, he certainly, I guess, would say that he had a temper, which he learned to bring under control over the years. Because he is leading men at this memorial, it's really about leadership and accomplishment, and there were many.
The memorial has prompted fresh contrasts between a bygone Republican president and the current one.
Great leaders prepare for every eventuality.
Dwight Eisenhower even making it into the 2020 campaign. A TV ad by the Republican group The Lincoln Project suggesting Donald Trump doesn't measure up to Ike.
Do you think those contrasts are fair?
I'm not sure how useful comparisons are. But I do think that comparisons are inevitable because people are looking to the past to show some guideposts and to understand how we got to this position. I do think, however, that the Eisenhower leadership style was much more effective for this country.
It was a style that put a premium on unity. President Trump and the 4 other living former presidents were invited to come together at this week's memorial dedication, but none are able to attend.
Do you see this as being a particularly right moment to get reacquainted with your grandfather and what he stood for?
The dedication of it was originally scheduled for May 8th, 2020, which would have been the 75th anniversary of VE Day. So we would have been celebrating a past achievement in a lot of ways. But the circumstances that we're in now really require us to look for something deeper.
With America divided and in crisis, the new Eisenhower Memorial is an invitation for reflection on how far America has come and the kind of leaders the country needs to shape a better future.
What's the message you hope they take away?
I hope for a child who comes here, they'll see that statue of young Ike, and maybe they'll wonder, how did this kid who came from Abilene, Kansas with, no advantage socially or economically, how did he figure out how to make his life into what it was? Because that is what we all hope the American story is, that freedom gives you opportunity, and with opportunity, you can paint your own canvas.
For ABC News Live, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington.
Our thanks to Devin for that. And before we go tonight, our image of the day. A shock for an Alabama resident dealing with Hurricane Sally. Take a listen to this.
Oh my God, this is outside of our window.
It is a 10 or 12 foot alligator.
Do you see that there? Tina Bennett took this video of the massive gator while hunkering down inside her Plash Island, Alabama home. She said, "This is why we don't want to go outside. There are many more." Here's to hoping that that gator stays out of Tina's way. And our thoughts are certainly with all the residents and businesses impacted by this storm tonight. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Good night.
What you need to know right now. Crawling, Hurricane Sally makes landfall in Alabama as a Category 2, battering the Gulf with relentless rains as intense smoke from the western wildfires